further ado, Kai Ellis.
Hi, I'm Kai, and I gave the last idea talk, and I'm very proud to be able to introduce our next talk with Andrew Ponte and the environmental effects on meat production. Enjoy.
Thank you very much for coming. Really appreciate it. To be or not to be. And one of Shakespeare's most famous speeches explores the idea of consequences. He looks at his choices, predicts the outcomes of each solution, and weighs the pros and cons. Similarly, I'd like you to consider a choice that you have every day, a choice that you make every day, to eat meat or not to eat meat. How many of y'all eat meat? Okay. I don't eat meat. I went vegetarian after seeing fooding. Do y'all see that? Oh my god. So it changed a lot of people's minds, I think. And then I went mostly vegan about 2 years ago. And I say mostly vegan to differentiate myself from hardcore extremist vegans that a lot of people, most people, assume that I am as soon as I say I don't eat meat or dairy. That assumption has gotten me some grief at times. You know, my family and my friends, they don't really understand my choice. And if I even try to explain it, try to get them to understand my reasons, then I'm preaching, judging, and they're just like, oh, going on. So my goal today was not to talk about veganism. I did not want to get that kind of reaction that I'd historically received. I wanted to approach this choice to eat meat or not to eat meat from a very logical and evidence-based standpoint, to show you facts that show our society's obsession with meat is killing our planet as much, if not more so, than any other human activity. Mr. Kenneth said in one of the first presentations that our choices are part of what makes us human. And in this case, your choice to eat meat or not to eat meat does not just affect you, it affects me and every human in this room because we all live on the same planet. I didn't really know that I had a choice growing up. I mean, there was just meat at every meal. We just ate it. And it wasn't until I realized that I had a choice and realized the consequences of that choice that I could not in good conscience ignore that. So, quick little background on current agricultural practices, how we produce meat. We grow animals as units of protein. Everything that we use, the amount of feed that we use to feed the animals, what we put in the food, the fertilizers, the antibiotics, the hormones, everything's very carefully calculated to make sure that that animal makes it to market weight as quickly as possible with as little cost to the confined feeding operation, CFO, as possible. Now we in the US actually have like what's considered a pretty efficient method because we have individual farm animals that require less feed, they produce less manure, and they reach market weight faster than they did on small family farms 50 years ago. So we're actually also very much more efficient than developing countries. They require a lot more resources in Africa to grow meat than we do here in the US. However, we produce 3 times as much meat as we did on family farms 50 years ago, and we produce 100 times more meat than those in developing countries. But my hamburger, how does that relate to climate change? Well, the efficient way that we use, that we turn that cow into a Big Mac is actually not really efficient at all. It takes a significant amount of energy, land, and water. We spend all these natural, precious resources to grow the food, feed the animal, shelter the animal, slaughter the animal, transport the animal, store the animal, and in return, we actually only get a little bit of animal meat to eat. So, starting with energy, livestock is responsible for 18% of global greenhouse gas emissions. That's a fifth of all global greenhouse gas emissions, livestock. That includes the emissions from the cows themselves. It includes the tractors used to haul the feed, harvest the feed. It includes the trucks hauling away the trees, the energy used to power the factories, etc. And greenhouse gases are bad because they trap heat in the atmosphere and cause climate change, right? So in the past 100 years, since we were ever even able to record temperatures, Earth's temperature has risen 1.5 degrees. Earth's temperature is expected to continue to increase another 0.5 degree to 8.5 degrees over the next 100 centuries. And that might seem like little tiny differences, but even tiny changes in temperature lead to huge and dangerous effects worldwide. So as the Earth has warmed and the glaciers have melted, sea levels have risen 6 inches in the past century. And that puts entire islands and coastal cities at risk of disappearing into the ocean. And it significantly disrupts marine ecosystems. As the Earth's temperature has warmed, the oceans absorb 80% of the heat caused by global warming. So then that results in the death of coral reefs, the collapse of fish stocks, entire species migrating from waters that are too warm for them. And hotter ocean temperatures also promote the conditions for more frequent and more severe hurricanes and tropical storms. Okay, but why is that the cow's fault? Well, cows produce some gases, as I said. Methane is 20 times more dangerous global warming potential than carbon dioxide. And nitrous oxide, which is from the cow's manure, actually is 300 times more damaging than carbon dioxide. So we have more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, but methane and nitrous oxide are way, way, way more dangerous when it comes to their ability to trap heat in the environment. And speaking of manure, the livestock and CFOs produce 3 times more waste than the entire US population. Iowa alone produces 50 million tons, just Iowa, because they have a lot of pig factories there, I guess. So that's a lot of waste. The manure is good for fertilizing farm fields, right? But confined feeding operations are notorious for leaking and putting way too much on the field. So too much manure actually damages the soil and makes it useless for growing crops again. And when the manure is leaked into our water, then it's very damaging to humans, obviously. The Environmental Protection Agency has documented 75% of all water quality problems in the US are attributed to livestock production. And this is just a section of the extent of water pollution in the Gulf of Mexico. So speaking of water, only 2.5% of the world's water is actually fresh. And only 1% of that is easily accessible. It's not all up in glaciers. So we only have 0.007% of the entire world's water supply is available to fuel and feed 7 billion people. And we use 1/3 of it to grow meat. 1/3 of our fresh water supply goes towards livestock production. And the problem is that obviously the population keeps increasing and we keep eating more and more meat, and that finite water supply is not increasing. Livestock production is the #1 cause of deforestation, 80% worldwide, just so you know. That's about an area the size of a football field, cleared every second. We need all that land to grow all that food so we can feed those cows and then get that little amount of meat protein in return. And in the process of doing that, we're actually hurting ourselves threefold. So trees decrease the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. They convert it to oxygen, release the oxygen, and they store carbon. So every time we clear cut those forests, we're releasing all that carbon back up in the atmosphere, further contributing to global warming. In addition, we're removing that tree's potential ability to continue stabilizing carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And then when we take the trees out of the water cycle, that leads to decreased rainfall and increased desertification. So then we have the hotter temperatures plus the increased drought makes the few forests that we do have left very vulnerable to insect infestation, disease, and wildfires. So here we have our forest as our most, inexpensive, efficient, natural process to combat climate change, and we're clearing it by the vast majority, 80%, so we can eat meat. How much meat? Let me tell you. 56 billion animals currently grown for human consumption worldwide. It takes up 1/4 of Earth's surface, 1/4. And out of all the crop space available to grow, actual grow crops, we devote 1/3 of it just to grow food for animals for us to eat. So that's actually 8 times more than it's 8 times more land than we use to grow food for ourselves, as we're growing to feed the cows. It's really inefficient. Global meat production has tripled in the past 30 years and is expected to double again by 2050. We in the US, might not come as a surprise, we eat a lot of meat, almost a pound a day. So the projected land required to support that much demand exceeds more than 50% the agricultural space that we have. So we literally do not have the room to grow that much meat that everybody wants to eat. So what happens if we eat a little bit less? Well, since the global greenhouse gas emissions produced by livestock are more than the entire global transportation sector, cars, planes, trucks, all of it, reducing your meat intake would make a huge difference. If everyone in the US ate no meat or cheese for just 1 day a week for 1 year, it would be like not driving 96 billion miles or taking 7.6 million cars off the road. If everyone here at Willamette, just students, only students, did not eat meat or cheese 1 day a week for 1 year, it would be like not driving 360,000 miles and taking 30 cars off the road. So that's not something to be, that's something to be proud of. We could do that. Has anyone in their whole life ever gone a day without eating meat? Even if it was an accident? I had strep throat and I didn't eat for a week and I was fine. So I guarantee you, if you didn't eat meat or cheese, for 1 day a week for the rest of your life, I promise you'll be okay. Eating less meat is cheaper and has a faster effect on global warming than any other improvement strategy for combating climate change. So right now we're already looking at reducing our dependency on fossil fuels, right? We're looking at solar panels and wind generators and renewable infrastructure. But all of that is going to take trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. I think it wrote 18. And it's going to take like 20 years or more to develop and implement, right? And it would take at least 100 years to see differences in the environment because that's how long it takes for carbon to equalize in the atmosphere. But if you just stop eating meat, or reducing it, you can start right now. It costs you $0. And you could see effects in as little as 8 years because methane, that primary gas that I was talking about, that has a global warming potential 20 times greater than carbon dioxide, that dissipates in the environment in 8 to 12 years. So you would see much quicker results if everybody made that kind of a cultural change. Conventional conservation says turn that water off when you brush your teeth and take a shorter shower, and then you'll save 2 to 3 gallons of water a day. Yay! But you could avoid KFC and save 500 gallons of water, or you could order a veggie burger and no cheese and save 1,800 gallons of water. And if you live in California, it takes like 4,000 gallons of water because there's such severe droughts down there. So if you order a veggie burger in California, it's making a big difference. Okay, so people do make, they justify their choices. I only eat this, or I only buy this kind of stuff. And that's good, but it's still meat, and it still damages the environment. If we actually devoted the same proportion of resources to growing meat the sustainable way as we do with factory farms, the results would be significantly worse, a lot worse. We actually have to reduce our meat intake in order to sustain those conditions that decrease the effect on the environment. There are a lot of experts that have said that we're going to have to stop eating so much meat whether we like it or not because we can't sustain this rate at where we're going. But a lot of environmental organizations are actually saying, well, we just need more efficient agricultural practices and we just need to modify the feed so that cows aren't so gassy. And I thought that it seems like really a lot easier just to not eat so much meat than to worry about how gassy cows are and modifying the food more. So the problem is not that there aren't facts out there. All these facts that I give you, you can look it up. I mean, there's so much information out there. But it's really difficult for environmental organizations to look at people and go, eating meat is bad for you and it's bad for the planet. And to do that in a non-judgmental way that people will actually listen and respond to and be like, oh, okay, I'll do what she says. Like, it just is hard. You can't do that. And yet here I am, asking you guys to consider that choice. I want to engage you as a group of people with a lot of power in your choices to consider the consequences of your choice to eat meat or to not eat meat. I think many of you probably feel like you don't have a lot of power. Your teacher's always telling you what to do, your parents always tell you what to do. But here's an area of your life that you can control, and you should feel empowered to be able to make a choice that has only positive consequences. There's only good that can come out of eating less meat. It's good for the environment, obviously. It's also very good for your body. It's also very cheap to eat less meat. So just remember that you are free to choose, but you're not free from the consequences of those choices. Does anybody think that they could consider eating a little bit less meat after today? Just consider it. That's good. I mean, maybe you already eat a little less meat. That makes me happy. And this is a great city to do that, to make that choice, because we have so many vegetarian and vegan options. So if you ever want to talk about any of those other reasons or have some good recommendations for places, I'm happy to talk about that with you. Thank you for listening. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, hi.
Hi, I've been a vegetarian for 7 years, and my family has always been like, oh, we need to eat protein, we need to eat
Oh my
protein.
God.
And I'm like, I'm trying, but I don't know exactly. I know beans and rice are good for it, but what else do you suggest?
Well, beans, nuts, lentils. I could go on and on. I am very, very, there's a lot of people that might know me that I'm very careful about my food intake and pay very close attention to my protein and vegetables. So there's a lot of alternative meat products out there. So I'd be happy to talk about that with you more. I don't know if you want me to go into that a lot right now. Matt, yeah?
Do you supplement your B12?
I do. I do take B12,
And
yes.
is that important for vegans to do?
I mean, I don't know about a lot of other people. I think it makes a difference for me. It's not that I don't have, I tend to be a pretty high energy person anyways. You knew that. But yeah, it does help because otherwise you maybe are a little less tired. I don't know about most people. I do take it just because I know I need to take vitamins. Yes, Lori.
Is there a distinction or information that you come across as far as like meatless versus vegan? Because I've gone down those roads, but it's really honestly for me like cheese and milk and yogurt. It's hard for me to think about moving all of that out of my diet, and so.
Well, I'm not asking to move all of it out.
Right. But so I just was curious. I'm like, just if you just went eating meat.
So reduce
all of it.
Yeah, I focused on meat today because, you know, that's it's easier for people to kind of associate that with meat, right? But really, it's meat and dairy because cows produce milk, right? So dairy is included. I mean, if you are vegetarian but you're still eating cheese and sour cream and all that, you're still contributing to that system. I mean, if you eat less of it, you know, less meat, less cheese, less sour cream or whatever else you put on your tacos. You know, like that does make a difference. But it's still damaging. So I guess I should have been like meat and dairy production.
I was just curious if numbers are presented out that way.
Well, no, there's tons of information out there. I mean, you can see actually like beef and cheese are like equal in the amount of greenhouse gas emissions that they produce. It's just as bad. Yeah, but I just didn't want to get into all of that, so I was just like, I'm just gonna say meat.
Yeah, I got you.
Yes.
I was wondering if you ate fish, because I know it counts as meat, but it's not necessarily produced the same way, so I was just wondering.
No, I don't eat fish, and yes, it does have it doesn't have the same impact. It is less environmentally damaging than out of all the meat. But no, it's still the way that we farm meat or fish even is very detrimental, and there's tons of information out there about it. It doesn't take you don't have to like search on the internet and be like, where is that? You know, it's just all out there. Hi, Katie. Yes. Hi.
I was wondering if you could speak or if you have any information about the power of dairy and agriculture or livestock lobbyists and the political.
Well, our taxes pay for meat. I don't know if you know. So some of our the meat industry is subsidized by our taxes. So, you see that when we went in the 70s or so, when we started initially factory farming, there was a big push to promote meat, like get them to eat it. What's for dinner? You guys probably remember that. There was like this big thing, like where's the beef? They just wanted beef at every meal, right? So right around that time is when we really started like huge meat consumption went up in the past 50 years or so. So yeah, the government did push it, and they are partially responsible, and that sucks. And the best thing we can do is like say that we're just not gonna buy that. That's my opinion. Oh, hi.
So this might be like a bit of a bold question, but how do you feel about people who know the facts about kind of meat production, but still consciously choose to eat meat, even if it's like not a ton of meat?
Yeah, like Mr. Walker, who is I have labeled him as you may have heard the term the flexitarian. Like some days you don't eat any meat or cheese at all, and then other days you do. Okay, so would I like it if every single person decided to be vegan? Of course I would. But do I think that's realistic? Absolutely not. And I don't judge, and I'm not like, I'm not gonna be friends with you. So, actually, I give him a hard time. Actually, I do, because I can. But I definitely see that it's not realistic for people to make a kind of choice. And that's another reason why I'm like, I'm mostly vegan, because a hardcore extremist vegan, like I have friends that are just like, nope, it's all or nothing. They can't even be friends with somebody who's like wearing weird boots and stuff. But from my perspective, I understand that everybody does the best they can. I think that's a fear of mine, is that when I got up here and I told everybody like, this is how I feel, that people would go, okay, cool, don't care. That was definitely a fear of mine. But I still feel like I've done my part, and I know that there are people out there who do their part. Even if it's one day a week, or even if they're just like that one time, I was gonna get a burger, but I decided to just have the nachos, or to have my salad, my delicious salad, because salads are very good for
Tater tots.
And oh my god, so many all the tater tots. I said I was vegan, I didn't say I was healthy, really. I eat a lot of tater tots. But yeah, did that answer your question? Oh,
So your slide that had the transportation on it, costs versus, or the greenhouse transportation emissions, it was like 13 to 18%. So does that, the transportation that does not include the cost, the transportation of meat, because that's included in the other statistic, is that right?
yes, I believe so.
Okay.
I
Just
believe
curious
so.
how it's broken down.
I'd have to double check. Yes.
Real quick. I think it was a couple of slides back. Could you go back to the water resource? I just want everybody to look at that.
This one?
Yeah.
1 pound.
That's how much water it takes to produce one singular pound of each of those things.
And remember, this is not consistent between locations. As I said, in California, where there's a severe drought, it actually takes 4,000 gallons of water because they're in drought.
Just think about that.
And in developing countries, their water is so scarce, and what they have is like really, really polluted. So when they grow meat, it's actually a lot more water as well.
Let's put our hands together for the sponsors. It is our tradition at the end of a talk to present the speaker with a signed copy of their poster, and then we're going to put it up. You can see the last tab on the far left. Today is a day to celebrate as well. This is a new thing. The WHS Idea Talks is a new thing for this year. And I want to thank a number of people who are in the room here who have been part of the planning, who have been part of the implementation, who have been speakers. So I'm going to name a few names and go, and I'd actually like you to stand up and get acknowledged. So Mr. Walker, if you could. Mr. Kenna, if you could. Cody, if you could. Yep. Kate, you got to stand up and back there. Mr. Skeeter, if you could be acknowledged. Mr. Simon. Mr. Simon's crew, if you guys could stand up as well. Without the brave souls who have stand up here and put themselves out there publicly, and without the people who are working behind the scenes to make the posters, to do the filming and the editing, this doesn't happen. And we're really excited about it happening. And by the talks and by the talk outside of the rooms, I think we're excited as a community as well. So look for us in the fall. We'll be coming back together, and we look forward to that. Take care. Thank you for being here, and enjoy the last couple weeks of school. All right?